Welcome to the Voice of Louisiana Agriculture podcast, a weekly look at the latest news in Louisiana agriculture. Coming up, we'll have a look at this week's Louisiana Ag News headlines. We'll check out the latest happenings at the state capitol and in Washington, D.C. in our grassroots government segment. We'll hear from one of you as we take you to the fields and pastures of the Bayou State and find out the latest in crop and cattle conditions. And we'll look inside the markets with commentary from experts at the Louisiana Farm Bureau Marketing Association. All of this and more coming up on this week's podcast. Now, here's the host of the Voice of Louisiana Agriculture podcast, Carrie Martin.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 12 of the Voice of Louisiana Agriculture podcast for July 20th of 2018. I'm your host, Carrie Martin, and I'm glad to be back with you after taking a couple of weeks off. Now, if you listened to our last podcast, I told you I was going to take a week off for the July 4th holiday. That actually turned into a 2-week break. I took another week to have some surgery done on my nose. There's no real helping the appearance of it, but it does work a whole lot better now. So I'm glad I had that procedure done. I can breathe a lot better, and I'm glad to be back with you, back in the saddle here for another edition of the Voice of Louisiana Agriculture podcast. And before we get started, I want to take a quick minute just to say thank you to everyone who listens to the podcast each week. I've gotten a lot of feedback from you over the last few weeks, especially at the Louisiana Farm Bureau Convention, as well as taking a look at statistics. You know, in this digital age, we can see how many people listen, how many people download, and the response has just been overwhelming. I'm just blown away by how many people listen and download the podcast each week, and I just want you to know I really appreciate it. Don't forget, you can always subscribe to the podcast through iTunes if you're an Apple user, through Google Play if you're an Android user. You can also get the SoundCloud app. You can subscribe to it right through SoundCloud, and the fourth way to listen is right off of our website, voiceoflaag.org. And you can download it from the website, or you can stream it right there as well. Just click the podcast link at the top of the page. Well, it's time to get started. Here's episode 12 of the Voice of Louisiana Agriculture podcast. News headlines is next.
Here's a look at the latest news headlines in Louisiana agriculture on the Voice of Louisiana Agriculture podcast.
Louisiana Commissioner of Agriculture and Forestry, Dr. Mike Strain, and Governor John Bel Edwards continued their tour of rural Louisiana last week. Last Thursday, they met with a group of sugarcane farmers in Iberville Parish. Our own Don Molino was at that meeting.
Dr. Strain, as usual, emphasized the importance of agriculture to the Louisiana economy.
Well, we're having a meeting, with the sugarcane farmers, and of course they grow soybeans and other crops. I'm here with Governor John Bel Edwards, and as you know, each year we do multiple farm tours. Mostly what we're here to do is listen, to talk about what's going on, listen to concerns of farmers. And what this does, this helps us as we move forward with our agenda for the year and what we're trying to accomplish in the legislature and on the national level. Because this is where the rubber meets the road. And these farmers are going to tell us exactly what's on their mind and exactly what we need to try to do. And then the governor and I will work together to try to accomplish that. Remember, our primary job is rural economic development. We talk about the work the governor and I do together, and agriculture and forestry. And so we're here in the heart of sugarcane country and some nice cane. You saw a lot of soybeans here. So, this is a beautiful place. And of course, we're here in the tractor shed. It doesn't get any better than that, right?
And Governor Edwards echoed the feelings of Dr. Strain.
Sugar crop last year was worth more than $1.1 billion. And all of ag and forestry together is $13 billion. So it's incredibly important, not just because of the economic impact, not just because of the jobs, but because it preserves a way of life that we've had in Louisiana that we enjoy, that contributes so much to not just our economy, but to everything that we know and love about Louisiana. And so it is incredibly important, which is why we have to continue to stay on the leading edge of research. And I appreciate the sugarcane farmers because they contribute directly to the cost of that research. And of course, we do as a state as well when we invest state general fund dollars in higher education in our ag centers, especially at LSU. So incredibly important. And I think you can see from the folks here today, they continue to be excited about what they were able to accomplish last year. And right now, they're looking at a good crop this year as well.
I'm Don Molino on the Voice of Louisiana Agriculture podcast.
Soybean prices are now at 9-year lows thanks to tariffs in the current trade standoff with China. Louisiana soybean producers have lost over $1 million in the value of the Louisiana soybean crop over the last 2 months. And that has soybean farmer Carlos Polazoa of St. Landry Parish very nervous.
If the tariffs remain in place and the Midwest actually, as a country, we harvest another big crop this year, then I think at the end of the year things could get severely ugly with an abundant supply. And China, as you know, they buy 60% of our soybeans. If they're not a major player in the market and buying our crop, it could get really ugly.
LSU Ag Center economist Dr. Michael Delaberto says the longer this trade dispute drags on, the more long-term damage we'll see to the market.
I'll say with trade tensions now that are real, 25% tariff on the soybeans that are going into China, as that demand shrinks or erodes and that demand can't be met by other countries stepping up to the plate and buying a portion of those soybeans, the carry-out or the ending stocks is going to get larger and larger.
As Polazola's soybean crop grows and moves towards harvest, he hopes that Congress will not forget about America's farmers and ranchers.
We're just one bad crop away from being in a really bind, so I hope our legislatures can remember the times years and years ago where this country was hungry and help sustain the farms. Other countries put a lot more money into agriculture than what this country does. And so I hope the legislatures will do the right thing when it comes to the Farm Bill.
Crop conditions continue to be mixed across Louisiana depending on where the rain has fallen. The latest Louisiana Crop Progress and Condition Report shows 35% of the state's topsoils are still struggling with poor to very poor moisture levels. Even with the hit-and-miss rainfall, the soybean crop ratings have improved. Ray Schexnayder grows soybeans in Point Capee Parish.
The bean crop right now looks like it's one of the best we've had in a long time. It's all the early beans, late beans, they all really look good.
Statewide, the soybean crop is rated 12% excellent, 43% good, 36% fair, and only 9% poor to very poor. Schexnayder hopes good crop conditions will help make up for the drop in soybean prices.
Right now it looks like, it could be $100,000 to $150,000 off from, what we had planned on.
The 2018 Farm Bill is now headed to conference, and Louisiana Congressman Ralph Abraham has been named to the conference committee. Don Molino has more.
Between the two versions of the new Farm Bill, Abraham says he prefers the one approved by the House.
Well, on the House side, I like the bill a lot. Now, again, I wish the Senate bill was a little more forceful in some of its provisions, but that's what the conference committee is for, to come to the table and, let's have that direct discussion with our Senate partners and say, hey, you need to get this done, for our farmers. I mean, we all know that, farmers are patriots. They're our thin green line, and we need to preserve that economic engine that they provide not only for Louisiana, but for America. I mean, in Louisiana alone, we're talking about billions of dollars of economic drive here. So it's it's a huge deal.
I'm Don Molino on the Voice of Louisiana Agriculture podcast.
We'll have more from Congressman Ralph Abraham in our Grassroots Government segment later in the podcast. The LSU Ag Center's H. Rouse Caffey Rice Research Station held their annual field day last month. Avery Davidson was there.
This is the 109th annual field day, a chance for farmers and researchers to interact and learn about the latest advancements in rice.
The funds that are generated by the patents and seeds and different varieties that we work with here are more than any other contribution that's made to the LSU system.
Louisiana Farm Bureau President Ronnie Anderson also sits on the LSU Board of Supervisors. He's not alone in knowing the monetary and educational value of the work done at the Rice Research Station.
We get to see the technology done here, we get to see the innovation, and we get to see everything the LSU Ag Center is doing to try to help our bottom line and varieties that reflect those kind of economic benefits to us. and it's a great way of sharing it with any and all.
As Evangeline Parish rice farmer Richard Fontenot pointed out, this event is about sharing with any and all, including Maria Montiel, a rice breeder from Argentina.
Here you have more access to technologies, and in Argentina we have been working in conventional breeding for a long time, so now we maybe are changing our minds in Argentina, looking all this process in USA.
But Montiel is not the only one here looking to learn. Ann Itzel is the Region 6 Administrator for the Environmental Protection Agency. It's by speaking with rice farmers like Kevin Birkin that she hopes to learn how the agency can best serve the people she calls customers.
It's vitally important for folks to understand that for us to continue making those human health and environmental benefits going forward and really realizing those gains, we need to have the ag community very firmly at that table, informing our opinions and our decision making, helping us better understand what they do on a day-to-day basis. And there's nobody that can do that better than the rice farmers here in Louisiana to communicate their message, their needs, their wants, the challenges they face, and the very creative solutions they're crafting to deal with those challenges.
Anderson says that's one of the roles of Farm Bureau, to be that conduit of information from the farm or ranch to the people who make laws and regulations.
We can work with the people in Baton Rouge, we can work with the people in Washington, we can work with our delegations to show them the need for all of this, and we kind of bring it all together.
Thanks again to Avery Davidson for that report from the LSU Ag Center's H. Rouse Caffey Rice Research Station Field Day in Crowley. Coming up next, we go to Washington, D.C. to talk with Louisiana's 5th District Congressman Ralph Abraham, who was recently named to the 2018 Farm Bill Conference Committee. That's next on Grassroots Government here on the Voice of Louisiana Agriculture podcast.
This is Trace Atkins for the Louisiana Farm Bureau Federation. Farm Bureau has been working for Louisiana's farmers and ranchers since 1922, and that work continues today. If you're a farmer or rancher, Farm Bureau wants you to join and be a part of their family. Farm Bureau knows you're busy running your operation, so while you're at work on your farm or ranch, Farm Bureau is watching out for your interests. So join today. The Louisiana Farm Bureau Federation, the voice of Louisiana agriculture.
It's time for a look inside the halls of government in this week's edition of Grassroots Government on the Voice of Louisiana Agriculture podcast.
And our guest on Grassroots Government this week is Congressman Ralph Abraham, Louisiana's 5th District Congressman, who also sits on the Ag Committee. Thanks so much for joining us, Congressman.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Let's start by talking about the Farm Bill. I know both the House and the Senate have both passed their respective versions of the bill. The bill is now set to go to conference committee, and I know that you have been appointed to that conference committee. If you would catch us up on what's been going on behind the scenes as we get these bills ready to go to conference.
Well, behind the scenes, there has been some, mild modifications, those that can be done without, actual votes being cast on them. So that when this bill does go to conference, which will hopefully be in September, I would prefer it to be earlier, but that looks like the more realistic date, the little items will be ironed out, and then the differences between the House and the Senate bills the large differences can just be front and center and get them done.
Probably the biggest difference between these bills is an issue that you and I have discussed in the past, and that is the work requirements for food stamps. The House bill contained that. The Senate bill did not. I've seen some news stories that said there's been some fairly heated words between the two sides here in the last couple of weeks over that issue. What are you hearing on that issue, and where do you think that's going to go once we get into conference?
I hope where it goes is that, those that can work do work. I am a huge supporter of allowing those that are having problems finding good jobs to give them the training that they need to get back in the workforce. Certainly my constituents, the people that I grew up with in the Delta, they do want that good job, and we want them to certainly have that good job. I want the funds available, that if that job is available, they take that job, and if it's not, let's give them training to get that good job that has a living wage, not a minimum wage income. But again, when we have people that are not working, that are receiving benefits, it's directly hurting those that need the benefits the most. So we need to get those people that can work to work. And again, I can tell you most of those in that category, they want that job.
It seems like this issue has believers on both sides that it may be one of those issues that could potentially sink this bill. Say if it comes out with the requirements, those in the Senate may feel strongly enough just to sink the bill. And same thing in the House if it comes out without the requirements. Do you feel like this could be a poison pill either way it goes?
I don't think it's so much a poison pill. It could certainly be a contentious debate once we get the conference bill out. But, as we saw on the House side, not one Democrat voted for the farm bill, unfortunately. And it is a bill that affects everybody in America. It's actually a good bill, and it will probably, unfortunately, on the House side be along party lines again. Now, moving to the Senate, we certainly have some of those Democrats that, are in a tight race as far as their reelection is concerned that voted for the farm bill the first time, and I would hope they would vote for the conference bill. So we'll just see how it goes. 80% of the United States citizens want these work requirements. This is a issue that has been polled many, many times, and again, the good citizens of America want those that can work to work.
Congressman, another big story out of Washington, D.C. recently is the resignation of Scott Pruitt, the administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency. What is your impression of his successor, Andrew Wheeler? Do you feel like he's going to be friendly to agriculture or at least give agriculture a fair shake when it comes to issues?
Yeah, I do think the acting secretary, Wheeler, will be fair to agriculture, and what I hope he does, and, he's already postured in some aspects already in the direction, is that he will simply continue Scott Pruitt's march to deregulate not only the agriculture industry, but our industrial industry, so many other burdens that are keeping our businesses and agricultural from growing. Let's get these regulations off the back of farmers. Let's get them off the back of our industrial workers and the ones that employ, just hundreds of thousands of people across this country. And let's get back to work. So I think Wheeler will continue that trek that Pruitt put in place. I hope he does. And I'm looking forward to watching what happens.
Probably one of the most controversial issues that came out of the EPA and the last administration against agriculture was the WOTUS rule, the Waters of the U.S. rule, which would put some very burdensome regulations on agriculture. Do you feel that Mr. Wheeler is going to continue to try to roll that back just like Scott Pruitt did?
I think he will. The WOTUS rule was bad from the get-go, and certainly former Secretary Pruitt recognized that, and luckily, took it off the front burner and basically not only put it on the back burner, but threw it out the back kitchen door. So hopefully Wheeler will do the same thing. Our farmers certainly need the relief of this. We don't need some irrigation ditch or some little trench running through a farm being called a navigable waterway and fall into that category. So again, I think we're in the good spot with Wheeler. Only time will tell, but and we'll watch him close.
Well, Congressman, we are here right in the middle of summer, but before we know it, fall will be here and deer season will be upon us. I saw a news story recently where you have sponsored a bill dealing with chronic wasting disease in our deer herd here in this country. Tell me about that bill.
Well, CWD is a very unknown disease as far as how it is transmitted, whether it's, just through body fluids. We're just not sure. So what my bill does, it's HR 6272. It just simply lets the U.S. Department of Agriculture partner with the National Academy of the Sciences to study and identify the ways that the CWD is transmitted between wild and captive cervids, deer, elk, moose, those types of animals. I worry that when a hunter harvests a deer, that if there is some possibility of exposure to humans being transferable, we've got to be very careful here. So, certainly we don't want to see our deer population decimated by this disease. As importantly, or more importantly, we do not want it to ever be transmissible between deer and human. So hopefully what this study will do is shed light on some very unknown, things that we need to find out what the truth is.
Congressman, I really appreciate the call. Thank you so much.
All right, y'all have a great day, guys.
Louisiana 5th District Congressman Ralph Abraham. Coming up next, we go in the field to talk to one of you. We'll go to West Monroe, Louisiana, to visit with Jeff Landry, owner of Landry Vineyards. That's next on the Voice of Louisiana Agriculture podcast.
This is Trace Atkins for the Louisiana Farm Bureau Federation. If you're a farmer or rancher, Farm Bureau wants you to join and be a part of their family. I grew up in Louisiana farm country, and I know all the hard work and sacrifice that you put into raising livestock, growing a crop, raising a family, and running a farm. Farm Bureau puts that same hard work and sacrifice into making life better for you and your family, so join today. The Louisiana Farm Bureau Federation, the voice of Louisiana agriculture.
We're taking you to the fields of Louisiana as we hear from one of you in the field on the Voice of Louisiana Agriculture podcast.
We go in the field this week to West Monroe, Louisiana. We're going to talk to Jeff Landry of Landry Vineyards. Jeff, how you doing today, buddy?
Doing great. Getting ready for harvest.
Getting ready for harvest. Well, I was going to ask you about that. We're going to talk about that later in the interview. But first, for those who may not be familiar with you and your operation, Jeff, tell me about Landry Vineyards. Give me a little bit of a history lesson on it, if you will.
Well, first of all, we're a Louisiana wine producer. And we started growing grapes in 1999 in Folsom, Louisiana. We're originally from St. Charles Parish. Libby and I grew up, my wife and I grew up in St. Charles. I'm from Luling, and she is from Des Allemands. And both of us have ties to agriculture. Her dad was a commercial fisherman all his life, and my grandparents were cotton farmers in Point Capee Parish, the Bruyette family. So that's my mama's side of the family. But we grew up around agriculture. I've always had a love for agriculture, and we decided to plant grapes there in Folsom, Louisiana, looking for something that we could do as a family, where we could take a raw product, add value to it, and stability. And we had this love for agriculture. We moved out to the country, 25 acres of land, and I had grown to appreciate wine. And then I discovered that, in fact, you can grow grapes here in Louisiana, wine grapes, quality wine grapes.
And then you end up getting transplanted thanks to Hurricane Katrina.
That's right. Hurricane Katrina was our opportunity. I tell people, don't feel sorry for us. We did just fine as a result of Hurricane Katrina. We sold our property, and it worked out for our good. And this is a much better growing situation. The conditions are more conducive to growing wine grapes here because we don't have the Gulf influence that we had down in South Louisiana, and ordinarily it's drought conditions. We're getting a little rain now, but the fruit is in great shape this year. So that's how we got up here, through Hurricane Katrina, and the community has really embraced what we're doing. They are very supportive, and really more and more Louisianians are learning about the truth of being able to grow wine grapes right here in Louisiana.
How many acres do you have in production there in West Monroe, Jeff?
We have 17 acres in the ground. When in production, that'll produce around 80 tons of grapes. So we're at about 60 tons of grapes now.
So you definitely have room for expansion.
Absolutely. We purchased 30 acres across the street, and we have lots more acreage to go. So we're careful about planting grapes because it costs about $20,000 to get 1 acre of grapes in production.
Wow.
And the raw crop value is only about $6,000. We do bring in grapes from California and even Columbia Valley, Washington State, where we can purchase some really nice fruit and make some premium wines that we're really getting excited about because we're about to release next year our first Washington State grapes. And that just enables us to be more successful as a Louisiana winery. We are very passionate about producing grapes right here in Louisiana that represent our great state. But there's lots of other opportunities for us to grow in different areas and really become, hopefully, we hope, a premium wine making business,
Jeff, what kind of production year has it been for you up there as far as growing grapes is concerned?
We're around 50 to 60 tons, and the grapes grow really well. So we're having a great experience with it. We're not having, it's very manageable. It is. Everybody has problems, as any farmer knows. You run into different issues, whether it be insects or fungus in our case. But we're really having a great deal of success here in these sandy hills in West Monroe. With the hills and the sand, when we do get precipitation, the water moves away from the root system, which is very important for grape growing. They will not tolerate wet feet. So a lot of advantages here in North Louisiana to growing grapes.
Well, you mentioned that it is harvest time. Tell me about what's going to start happening around there when you start harvesting grapes.
Well, first of all, we have been handpicked from the beginning, and last year we purchased a harvester because it just has reached a point where it's almost impossible to get all the fruit out in a timely manner. There's not a lot of people who want to do that type of work. It's really tough. It's hot, as you know, in August. That's when we bring in the white grapes. This year it looks like it's going to be closer to the end of July. We've had a little bit of a warmer season and an earlier start, perhaps, but so we bought a harvester, and the harvester works extremely well. It's very gentle on the vines. It shakes the vines and shakes the grapes off, and extracts the mog material other than grapes, and we have just really nice, pristine fruit. Really excited about our future because we can continue to grow now, plant more grapes.
I know you continually add new wines. How many wines are you making now, Jeff?
19. I think the count right now is 19, and we'll be soon releasing another, and then next year a couple of more. So there's more coming. We're always looking forward to doing new things that we think our customers will appreciate.
Jeff Landry of Landry Vineyards in West Monroe, Louisiana. Jeff, I'm overdue a visit. I've got to come up there and see you again.
Please do. We love having people come, and of course we love visiting with you and your wonderful, sweet wife.
Jeff Landry of Landry Vineyards in West Monroe, Louisiana. Coming up next, it's time to take a look inside the markets. We have our regular market analyst standing by to give you an update on the grain and livestock markets. That's next on the Voice of Louisiana Agriculture podcast.
This is Trace Atkins for the Louisiana Farm Bureau Federation. Louisiana farmers and ranchers dedicate their lives to producing the food we eat and the clothes we wear. Agriculture touches all of us every time we sit down at the table. So support Louisiana agriculture by joining Farm Bureau. And you don't have to be a farmer to join. If you're already a member, we thank you. Your membership supports farmers and ranchers right here in your local community. The Louisiana Farm Bureau Federation, the voice of Louisiana agriculture.
Now let's look at the markets with insight from the experts at the Louisiana Farm Bureau Marketing Association on the Voice of Louisiana Agriculture podcast.
The grain markets finished higher on Friday, finishing in positive territory for just about all of the grain contracts. Greg Fox with the Louisiana Farm Bureau Marketing Association says overall it was a fairly good week for the grains.
This week we've seen a nice green on the markets, indicating we're up pretty much every day. We haven't covered everything that we lost, but we saw some nice recoveries throughout this week. It pretty much all started off with a little dip in the overall crop ratings for the U.S. Came in a little bit lower than the previous week, although we're still within on the good side as far as for the 5-year average for good to excellent. But, it's good to see that dip in those ratings. It gives us a little bit of boost. Nothing has changed as far as for tariff talks, trade talks. Weather still looks favorable, but when we start dipping into August, it looks like it could get hot and dry.
Rice harvest is now getting underway in Louisiana, and the rice market has been mostly steady over the last week or so. That's according to rice marketer Mark Tall with the Louisiana Farm Bureau Marketing Association.
September new crop futures have traded sideways over the last 5 days. September has traded about 11.70 to a high of 11.97 per 100. At this point, no real fundamental change, but maybe soon, and when it does, the market will react accordingly. The cash market is unchanged and steady, trading at around 11.73 a 100 based on a 62/70 number 2 long grain. More farmers have started harvesting in various locations in the last couple of days. At this point, there are no field yields to report due to limited harvesting at this time. The world market price was lower this week. Long grain down 48, medium down 47, and brokers down 29. We look forward to serving our farmers' needs in the 2018-19 marketing year. Happy harvesting.
The soybean market closed higher on Friday. August beans up 3 3/4, 8.49 3/4. New crop November beans up 3 1/4, 8.64 3/4. The corn market closed strongly higher with September corn up 4 cents, 3.55 1/4. December corn up 4, closing at 3.69. September wheat was up 11 3/4 to finish the week at 5.16 a bushel. Rough rice closed slightly higher. September rice up 6 1/2, 11.93. November rice up 9 1/2, 11.78 1/2. The cotton market closed lower. October cotton down 80 points, 87.50. December cotton down 51 at 87.04. September sugar up 4, closing at 25.26. Cattle futures were mixed. August live cattle up 2, 108.92. August feeder cattle down 77, closing at 153.67. Now to talk about the cattle markets, we talk to our regular market analyst, Dave Foster, former market reporter here in Louisiana and current CEO of Cattle Producers of Louisiana. How you doing today, Dave?
Doing fine.
Well, we've got a lot to talk about today. USDA released a couple of fairly big reports that we can discuss. First off, let's talk about the Cattle on Feed report. That's released every month, and we usually discuss that when it comes out. The numbers that came out on the Cattle on Feed report, Dave, anything in those numbers that stuck out to you?
Well, I was glad to see that this particular Cattle on Feed report came close to, if you will, the guesstimates of all these experts, and so they're, like I say, the numbers were very close. The estimates for the total cattle on feed was 4% more than a year ago, and that's what the experts said. And then placements were 1% above, and that was about what they were saying. So that's a good thing. And then marketing. So the experts had it right the same as the same period a year ago, and it showed 1% more. So for me, that's a huge thing when we're talking about, and we're just kind of coming through, and we're on the downhill side, Kerry, of these feedlots marketing cattle. And as you know, we were into a huge wall of cattle that we had to work through. And I will compliment both the feeders and the packers for getting this through in a way that it seemed to me that everybody was making money. The packers certainly made some money. The feeders they were expecting to really have a horrible time getting through all these numbers and the price. As a matter of fact, back in February, there was predictions that the fat cattle market could be below $1, and I think the lowest it got was somewhere around $1.06 or $1.07. So We're doing. I think we're doing very well with that. Like I say, we're on the downhill side, so that tells me that we're in good shape. Demand is still pretty good. The product is moving, so those things are positive all for us.
Let's talk about this other report that came out. USDA releases a cattle inventory report twice every year, once in January, once in July. We got that report out this week, and the numbers in it show that our all cattle and calves are at 101% of a year ago, so we're up 1% larger than a year ago. The calf crop at 102% of a year ago, so overall, the cow herd and the overall cattle herd continues to expand.
That's an interesting thing, and what I am really looking to see what happens at the end of January in 2019, Kerry, because what will happen then, of course, it'll be the inventory beginning of the year 2019, because I've been watching these figures of the number of cows that have gone to slaughter the first 6 months of this year, and it is a pretty sizable. It's 11% higher than a year ago. Well, that kind of tells me that we're not building inventory, and there may be part of that could be some dairy cattle moving because of the dairy situation that we're in. But the other thing is that heifers, heifer kill is almost 8% higher through the first 6 months, and what, Kerry, what did the report show that the heifer inventory was?
When you look at the heifer numbers, it showed that heifers for beef cow replacement 98% of a year ago, so we're holding less heifers over to replace the cows that we're losing.
Yeah, that is right, and you know, the beauty of this kind of a deal, you never know sometimes about these reports, and sometimes we question these quote government reports, but really that fits into exactly what's been happening. I was watching some of the video sales earlier this year. We had one here. Superior had a big one in Louisiana in April. A lot of those heifers that were for sale there, and I know many of the ranchers here would sell replacement heifers and wholesome heifers back. That wasn't happening this year. Through the whole country, the same kind of a scenario. And talking to many people throughout the United States, asking them about, are you saving heifers? Are you saving heifers? And the answer was pretty much no through all the people that I had talked to. So that tells us that we're certainly not building our herd or expanding our herd at the rate that we thought we would 2 or 3 years ago.
Well, Dave, let's bring that close to home. What does that mean for the Louisiana cattle industry?
Well, again, for us in a cow-calf state, that's kind of a good thing. To be a little bit short of numbers, if you will, because we're not in the market really. Our commodity that we sell are weaned calves and yearling cattle, and so we're depending on that demand being high for cattle going to somewhere, going to a wheat development deal, going to a grass deal, ending up in a feedlot and going to that packer. So that's what our market is focused on, and as numbers increase, prices tend to get lower because they're anticipating just a lot of supply, and that may not be as true as they thought, which in the long run for us is going to be a very good thing.
Dave Foster, Cattle Producers of Louisiana. Thanks so much for the insight, Dave.
You are more than welcome.
Coming up next, we take a look at the Louisiana Ag Calendar to see what's happening in Louisiana agriculture over the next couple of weeks and put the wraps on this edition of the Voice of Louisiana Agriculture podcast.
This is Trace Atkins for the Louisiana Farm Bureau Federation. Believe it or not, your food doesn't come from the grocery store. It just may have been grown on a farm right here in Louisiana. And those jeans you're wearing may have come from a Louisiana cotton farm. Louisiana's farmers and ranchers take pride in producing the food and fiber that we all use in our daily lives. So each time you sit down to a meal or get dressed for the day, thank a Louisiana farmer or rancher. The Louisiana Farm Bureau Federation, the voice of Louisiana agriculture.
Now, to wrap up this week's podcast, let's take a look at what's coming up this week on the Louisiana Ag Calendar.
We have 3 events coming up on the Louisiana Ag Calendar in the coming week, and they're all on the same day, Thursday, July 26th. First is the LSU Ag Center's Sugarcane Field Day. That will be held in Jeanerette on Thursday. If you'd like more information, check out the LSU Ag Center's website at lsuagcenter.com. The next event happening on Thursday, the 26th, the Louisiana Farm Bureau's Coastal Advisory Committee will be holding their meeting in Baton Rouge at the Farm Bureau headquarters. That again is on Thursday. And then our third meeting happening on the 26th is a seed cotton program workshop. Now that seed cotton is back into Title I of the Farm Bill, there will be a workshop to help you make that transition and give you all the information you need to participate in that program. That will be held in Winnsboro, again on Thursday, July 26th. That is a look at the Louisiana Ag Calendar, and that puts the wraps on episode 12 of the Voice of Louisiana Agriculture podcast. It felt good to get back in the saddle after taking a couple of weeks off. Hope you enjoyed it. I know I did, and am looking forward to be back with you again every week on a regular basis. In the meantime, be sure to connect with us on social media. We're on both Facebook and Twitter at Voice of LA Ag. We update those on a daily basis with the latest news and information in Louisiana agriculture. We'll see you back in 1 week on the Voice of Louisiana Agriculture podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Voice of Louisiana Agriculture podcast. Join us again next week. This podcast is produced by Carrie Martin and the Louisiana Farm Bureau Federation. For more information, be sure to check out our website, voiceoflouisianaagriculture.org and lafarmbureau.org.